And these so-called crown kingdoms, fungi, animals, and plants, are three twigs here at the end of the eukaryotic branch of life. And there's Homo, that's the branch representing all animals on Earth, and that's us. So in fact, there is very little genetic diversity between us as humans and plants and fungi, and most of the diversity, most of the genetic diversity of life is in fact in the microbial world, here in the more complex single-celled organisms and here in the so-called simple single-celled organisms. Well, it turns out that this genetic diversity that we see in this tree of life corresponds to a tremendous amount of metabolic diversity. And it is that metabolic diversity, in part, that enables life to inhabit environments on Earth that we did not think were inhabitable. So, for example, until the 1970s, the late 1970s, it was thought that the floor of the ocean was a desert where life was concerned. That is, that we would not find life on the floor of the ocean. The reason at that time was thought to be pretty simple. There's no sunlight down on the floor of the ocean, and surely life really requires sunlight, and since there's no sunlight on the floor of the ocean, we are not likely to find any life on the floor of the ocean. Well, it turns out that that was quite wrong. And in the late 1970s, we discovered ecosystems at hydrothermal vents, that is, places on the ocean floor where very, very hot water, seawater that has been cycled down through the crust and now reemerges through these vents carrying many, many chemicals, chemicals which provide chemical energy for these ecosystems. And they come out in things like this, which is called a black smoker, and that chemical energy enables ecosystems like this to exist. These are tube worms, and along with those tube worms, there are crabs, there are shrimp, and there is a great deal of microbial diversity associated with these systems as well. In fact, half of the mass of those tube worms is actually in microbes. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. So this is all a result of the metabolic diversity that is associated with this tremendous genetic diversity that we now know exists. Another place that had been thought to be sterile was boiling acid hot springs in places like Yellowstone National Park, and you have such hot springs here in Ecuador and in many other countries around the world. It was thought that at a pH of 2 or 3, which is approximately the same acidity as battery acid from your car battery, that life could not exist, and particularly when the temperature